All right, I'm gonna move on to the topic of the day. So this is a new initiative from a company called Verdant, who went out and I'll show you this is the website that Con Ed did with Verdant, but you can see, Verdant's information is listed here on the Con Ed site. Same thing with National Grid. They work with most of the utilities in the country now. And basically the idea is that there are all of these energy efficiency measures you can make in your building that will save you a lot of energy. And I think what utilities realized recently is that even when the financial proposition is incredible, like spend $100,000, save $100,000 every year afterwards. So over 10 years, you'll save $1 million for a one-time investment of $100,000. It's a no-brainer on an economic level, but yet still a lot of buildings don't do it because they don't want to put up the money. So what Verdant did is they made deals with most of these utilities to basically subsidize loans to make the upfront cost zero. And that substantially basically changes the economics because it makes these initiatives basically cash flow positive on day one. So I put out a video every week. I'm going to start this by playing the video, and then I'm going to open it. I'm going to show you Verdant's calculator so you can see how it works, and I'll open it up to questions. So for those of you who don't subscribe to my videos, you can get them on the website if you go to the Learning Hub and click subscribe. I do a 2-minute video every week. This week's video is on the subject, so I'm going to play this video, and then it's really quick. It's 2 minutes, and then we'll jump back into it. What if I offered your building $100,000 a year, free and clear, and it costs you nothing up front? The reality is there are a number of energy efficiency projects you can do in your building that effectively will do this. The challenge is even after rebates, there still is some upfront cost, and many buildings can't afford that money. And that is where a new program from utilities is about to change this game completely by offering zero or low interest loans to buildings across the country. Let me show you in mathematical terms why this is such a powerful concept. Building X spends $500,000 a year and wants to install smart heating controls. Those smart heating controls will save them approximately 20% on their heating bill, or $100,000 a year. The cost of that smart control up front is $100,000, meaning over 10 years, you're going to save $1 million for a one-time investment of $100,000. This is an absolute financial no-brainer. It becomes even more of a no-brainer when the utility company is offering to pay for $50,000 of that upfront cost. So why wouldn't everybody do this? Well, the answer is sometimes buildings simply don't have that $50,000 available to put up front. This is where low-interest loans have such a gigantic impact. At 0% interest, which is as low as some of these loans can be sometimes, that $50,000 can now be financed over 2 years. Instead of it being $50,000 up front for the building, it's actually less than $2,100 a month. If you're going to save $100,000 a year, that's about $8,000 a month in energy savings. That means on day one, you're making net $6,000 a month in profit. This is a transformative offer, and it's something that utility companies are literally rolling out right now. So how do you take advantage of this? Well, the first thing is you need to see if there are rebates available for your building and if your building is eligible for these low or 0% interest loans. To make this as easy as possible, we put together a tool to figure this out for your building right this second. All you have to do is scan this QR code or go to this URL, and in a few minutes, we'll ask you a couple of questions and immediately see if your building is eligible for not only utility rebates, but 0% interest loans for smart controls. With 30 to 40% of carbon emissions in every city coming from how buildings operate, we need to make it as accessible as possible to make improvements to buildings that cut their carbon emissions. The real beauty of these low interest loans is that it's not about savings and energy efficiency in the long term. It's about making your building carbon friendly and budget friendly starting today. All right, I'm going to pause there. Any questions just at a high level before I go into more of the details of this?
Yeah, I have a question.
Shoot.
There doesn't seem to be any programs where buildings that are running a number 2 fuel and not gas are able to access any rebates, will this loan program be available to diesel-driven boilers as opposed to gas or electric?
It's a great question. So two things. This loan program through Verdant is not subsidized for non-gas buildings. However, they do have the same program for non-gas buildings. It's just at a higher interest rate. It's a more normalized, like 8 to 10% interest rate. With that said, in many cases, if you're running on oil and you're doing a measure like smart controls or a few others that are just insane ROIs, it makes a ton of sense to do the financing, because unless you have the cash up front, it makes a ton of sense to do the financing because the cost of number two oil is so expensive that you end up saving so much money that if you can just eliminate the upfront cost, you're going to be cash flow positive on day one. And they actually, and I'm going to walk you everybody through this, they have a calculator for this. So, and we're going to send all of this out later. We're going to send our rebate utility tool and a link to this calculator and Verdant, but you can actually plug in your number two oil building and it will show you exactly essentially what the savings on the measure will be, et cetera. And we, if you want to look at it just strictly from smart controls, like Runwise, like we can have somebody that will do all that work for you as well. The second thing I would point out is that with us specifically, we have an internal rebate program for certain oil buildings. It's not nearly at the level that the gas ones are. But if you have a specific building, we sometimes can apply that internal rebate, which can give you a little bit of a relief on the upfront, and then you can finance the remaining portion.
I have a quick question, and I'm
Yes.
jumping ahead a little bit because
No, go ahead.
I have to get off the call in about 20 minutes. But just went ahead and I looked at the website. It says a deadline that all projects must be submitted by June 30th to 2024. Is that going to be extended? What's the story with that?
We don't know. We think so. My recommendation is if you want to take advantage, if you guarantee you want to take advantage of it, definitely submit an application basically in the next few days. You don't have to put up any money. You don't have to do anything. It takes literally like 30 minutes to fill out the app and you get like an answer pretty quickly. We'll do that for you if you're doing smart controls, but I would say probably 80% odds this is going to be renewed. I can't guarantee it. They have to wait for each utility to basically guarantee it. And that is the Con Ed date.
Okay, so because I have a property that I'm about to rent and I'm going to be, doing all new HVAC.
Yeah.
So ideally, if we apply now, we'll get grandfathered in.
I believe so, yes.
All right, so I'll call you after the video and we'll discuss more, or we'll
Fantastic.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Other questions? Does everybody understand how this works at a high level?
No.
Okay, so let me actually present the calculator because I think this might actually help explain it a little bit better. So this is Verdant, the company that the utilities work with to do this. This is their calculator. And they make this available to everybody, so anybody can use this. But basically, you fill this out. So let's say you're a multifamily building. Let's put in, okay, we're going to finance the amount after the incentive. So let's say that you are a building, there is an incentive available. It's a rebate, and we're putting our address, and then we say, okay, the total project cost is, I'm going to use the example from the video, $100,000. Con Edison is willing to give us $50,000. Here's the annual project energy savings is estimated to be $100,000. And the amount financed, because Con Ed is covering half of it, of the 100,000 is 50,000. So these are just variables you can fill in. You can do this for an oil building too. You can say there's zero Con Ed incentive, right? Anyway, so then what it'll show you here is, the first thing it'll show you what the different options are for financing. So here you see there's 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84 months. You can choose it. Obviously, the longer the maturity, the higher the interest rate. If you do 24 months and at least 50% coverage on a rebate, you can see it's 0% interest. So this was what we used in the building here, in the video here, $2,883 a month. 100,000 estimated savings. This is what the energy savings calculator looks like. You can see here that basically monthly energy savings, you're making positive cash flow extremely quickly on this type of job. And here you see like what it looks like at every single, financing level. As you can see, even though you're paying higher interest rates over longer periods, the actual cash flow is better on a monthly basis when you do longer maturity because you're paying less on the initial upfront. So your net cash flow each month, even though the interest is higher, is still higher. Again, you can do this with a project that has zero Con Ed incentive or zero rebate eligibility. Here, you see you're getting a market interest rate here, which is somewhere around 10% on the longer dated maturities. And even with a 10% loan on a really good measure, you're still drawing $2,000 or $3,000 in an 84-month loan, almost $4,000 a month of additional net income, even without a Con Ed rebate. Does that make sense, Don?
Yeah. I'm curious because when we refied our property, we arranged for an LOC that would be 1% above prime, which right now makes it 9.5% interest. This comes out higher than what we've got.
Yes, because I don't think this is, I don't know what the collateralization is on this, but it's not obviously the same as something that's collateralized against the property directly. There's higher risk. The reason that they're able to do super low interest rates when there's a utility rebate. So if we put the rebate back in at 50,000 here, you see these are substantively lower than what you're paying on your interest rate, is because the utility is actually collateralizing it. They're guaranteeing the loan. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So my question is, if we converted a number 2 building to gas, does that then cost factor make sense, or is it still prohibitive?
It depends. I would get a few bids on the conversion cost and what the rebates are for that. I've seen variations. Some buildings, it makes a ton of sense over a 2 or 3 year period to do the conversion. Some buildings, it takes a lot longer to pay back. So I would quote that out. Obviously, once you do that, then it also opens up other opportunities for incentives. So for example, beyond the conversion incentive, you can then get, like, for example, Runwise incentivized, significantly because of gas. They'll pay for other measures because they're incentivized. So there are downstream rebate benefits from that. But for sure, you can get financing for the conversion if there's a nice generous rebate on that conversion from your utility.
Okay.
What other questions do folks have? Anything? Any questions on the financing stuff, on Runwise, on anything energy efficiency or utility rebate related?
Well, we're talking about the financing of it. What about identifying the projects themselves?
Yeah, so there are a variety of different measures you can do in buildings. Obviously, we focus primarily, obviously, as you know, Don, on the controls aspect. But, as Don was recently asking, like, there are obvious ones like conversions, insulation, things like that your utility will cover. We do have a form where if you fill it out, we'll give you essentially a list of all the utility rebates that are eligible for your building. If you really want like a better analysis, there are engineers I can recommend that will do fairly low cost walkthroughs of the buildings, and they'll tell you which measures they think are likely to be the highest ROI to save you energy. And they can also look up the financing and rebate elements of that as well.
Well, aren't you guys also identifying those when you do your work on, and I always forget the new numbers for them, but like the old 84 and 87 and now 97?
Carlson Energy, which is
your sister company. Okay.
Will can do that as well, for sure. Yep. And if you ask them and say, hey, like, can you identify which of these have rebates and how much and, you know, what the financing looks like, you can use this calculator yourself, or they can do that for you. But Dawn's raising a good point. If you do your local law audit in New York City, you should get a list of measures that ranked by, you know, how cost effective and helpful they'll be against your budget. And that's a good way to stack rank potentially what to work on next.
What was that? How do we get the list?
If you're required to do an LL84 audit, your auditor should, meaning you're above a certain square footage, 25,000 square feet, you have to do an audit every, I think, 5 years in New York City. Your auditor should provide you a list of measures that will reduce your energy usage in the building, and they should be able to tell you which are the highest ROI and which are eligible for rebates.
Have you come across anything where it's proven cost effective to have a building square footage read to see if the DOF measurements, which were done at some point back in history, are actually accurate?
I have heard of folks doing that. To be honest, I don't know if what the like success rate is of it. But I can connect you with somebody that does this more frequently and might be able to give you a better answer on it.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
No problem.
We're like 25,818.
Got it. Yep. Any other questions or anything else I can cover today?
You just kind of wrap up like what the appropriate next step is for us to, if we want to get this in for, you know, the end of this month. What's the immediate action item?
So if you are looking at smart controls, I can get
I have smart controls.
So. You already have like Runwise or something else. So you're looking at other
correct.
methods.
So what caught my attention was just the ability to apply for the rebates and how to go about that process.
Yeah, are you looking for it for other new measures or for like what's the
yeah,
what do you want
new measures, anything that would be
measures
potentially out there that I'm not doing right now?
Great. So what I would do is, do you know what measures you want to do, or do you need somebody to actually advise you on that?
I need a little guidance, and I've worked with Marco at Carlton Energy. Is he at Carlton? Is he my guy?
Yeah. So Carlton would be your best bet to ask them. Say, hey, can you give me a rundown on my buildings, like where you think the best measures would be, and then this tool, then just ask them, hey, can you get me to an engineer to actually like do that? I can also refer you to engineers that I think are phenomenal. There are a couple that we work with regularly that, you know, can quickly look at your building and be like, hey, this is what I recommend. And, you know, you can file an app pretty quickly with Verdant. And if you're Con Ed to apply for those rebates.
Lee,
our engineer would be great. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Lee, which engineers are those that you work with a lot and recommend?
Yeah, so for like things like this where I'm sourcing like large capital projects, I highly recommend Ralph Germain.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you work in New York, you probably know Ralph. He's one of the most honest, and I trust his judgment. He also doesn't tend to oversize or overscope projects and just spend money for the sake of spending money. So on a just straight ROI level, I would definitely reach out to Ralph. If you're looking for things like venting or insulation or things that are like smaller measures, a real good plumber tends to be good at those. They find return line leaks. And then if you're just looking for repairs and things like that, we work with a lot of HVAC contractors and can make recommendations there and give you a list of a few that we think are great.
You guys work with Tom McGovern?
I don't know the name personally. What does he do?
Oh, because I spoke to him and he said that he works with you guys. So he might
work with our partnership team. I just may not personally know him, to be
Oh,
honest.
and Kevin, what's his name? Kevin Parham?
Oh, Kevin. Yeah. So yeah, for sure we work with like 75 different partners. So that doesn't surprise me that I didn't know his name off the bat.
No, different name. He's not the same company.
No, Kevin, I've heard of, but I didn't hear of the first guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tom McGovern. Okay.
Tom McGovern.
We
Yeah.
can talk separately.
Okay. Great.
Okay, and then also, are there subsidies? I think there are for installing the Runwise system itself.
Yes, for sure. So if you're particularly on gas, there are utility rebates, and now you can finance 100% of the upfront cost if there are rebates. If you're not on Runwise, we have an internal rebate program for some oil buildings. So if you have a list of buildings you want us to look at, I will happily check if they're rebate eligible and tell you which.
That's all right. I'm actually, funny enough, I was tuning into the Runwise webinar that's usually hosted by Leaf Huff.
What?
I don't think that was for you.
Oh, I don't think so.
Tom McGovern is Geotane.
Geotane. Okay. I'll reach out to you afterwards,
Okay.
Dawn, and you can give me his contact information. If we don't work with him, we definitely should, if he's great. And if we do, even better.
Question,
Yes, Don.
operating system that you install.
Yes.
One of our concerns, which we're trying to bridge, is if we put in the Runwise system and if we put in Kelvin system, having their data go into your stats so that you get a hell of a lot more data points from the cozies.
Yes.
Of which there could be 30 apartments of cozies.
Yep.
As opposed to 8 temperature sensors. I know that one company is working on integrating with them. Are you planning on doing that? Because to have multiple operating systems will just drive us nuts. We've got a tiny board and
we already have an integration with Kelvin. We work with them in a number of buildings. We ingest their data and they ingest our data already on, I think, at least 5 to 10 buildings, I believe. I actually oversaw that integration many years ago. What we won't do is install our system without any sensors. We can install it with a few less, but the reason that we won't do it without our sensors is that our algorithms are calibrated on 7,500 buildings with our sensors placed in very specific ways, and the cozies are located in very specific other locations, and we need our sensors to do that. With that said, we do ingest the cozy data and it improves the results. And we use that data to get better output. So it's great when you want to use both. We're like big fans of that, but it doesn't completely replace the need for sensors on ours.
okay, you're a salesperson who's been talking to us is unaware of that.
Who are you working with?
Working with Kevin?
Kevin. Okay, I'll talk to Kevin afterwards. But for sure, I mean, you can talk to the Kelvin folks. They've done an integration with us, so they know that we ingest their API and vice versa.
Okay. Because to have multiple systems that we've got to look at this and that, and the other person's output, it's, how do we do that? It's.
It is, the one trick, I kind of hear what you're saying. You're basically saying like, hey, we got to look at like the cozies, we got to look at the Runwise, like it's kind of a pain in the butt. There is some of that will exist because they are really controlling 2 different things. The cozies are really controlling the essentially like per unit temperature, and the Runwise is adjusting the central heating system. And those are 2 different levers of control. I think that the fact that they work together means you're getting the benefits. You're getting not 1 + 1, but 1 + 1 equals not 2, but 2.5, which is great. But they're different cockpits, right? It's sort of like, when you're like in an airplane and you're flying the airplane in the air, you have to use the cockpit. When it's on the ground tower is driving the vehicles using the ground.
The issue, and I didn't express it carefully. The issue is that we've got to look at 2 different operating systems. If you drill down on the issue is if the data isn't integrated, we have no way to correlate the data between the 2 systems to see what the sweet spot is. But
the data is definitely being ingested on our end, and we give them data too, so I'm pretty certain they're ingesting it on their end. So, and we do this in a number of buildings, so I guarantee you the 2 systems will work nicely together and you will see good results with them. Like, I know that because we've done it in a number of buildings with them. They're very complementary. They're not attacking the same problem. They're attacking two different problems, and those problems work together. The cozies are effectively giving you more normalized temperature in units by acting as a battery, right, to keep the heat in and then release it out as the cycles of the building run. But they're not fundamentally changing how much energy you use in the building, because your central heating system is going to run independent. Runwise is simply controlling the central heating system to make it run as optimally as possible and to reduce your energy usage. So you sort of get the best of the both worlds, where you get, the 15 to 25% energy savings from Runwise, you get a few extra points of energy savings from the cozies, and then you get more comfortable user tenant controlled temperature in the units from the cozies.
That is a great explanation. I hope it stays in this, because I'll make this video mandatory for my board members that have a tech IQ over 12.
I'm on a co-op board too, and I feel the same. Don, also, if it's helpful, I'm always happy to come to a board meeting and answer questions on the integration. I oversaw the integration between us and them, and I'm very familiar with their product. A lot of Lefrak buildings and Fairstead buildings have the cozies. We have every single one of the Fairstead and Lefrak buildings. So I'm happy to come by and directly answer questions too, and try to explain it as simply as possible if that's ever helpful. Any other questions? Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a good-